We're back for Bench Racing Volume 14 on site here at the Muskoka Brewery. On my left-hand side, one of my best friends in this kooky industry here, former TQ Can-Am Midget champion, NASCAR Canadian Tire Series hopeful of 2014, Daniel Bois. On my right-hand side, I think you were most improved driver at the OSCAAR banquet a couple weeks ago. So, OSCAAR Modified Tour sophomore, former Legends standout, former Hurricane Midgets champion. This dude drove from New Hamburg to Muskoka, which, I don't know, that's like a 13-hour drive or something. He drove across the province just to be here. We appreciate it. He wins the Long Haul Award. It's the New Hamburg Nightmare. Matt Barton. No tickets at all. And Muskoka has a lot of cops doing radar. Like, I'm from Toronto. I'm not used to seeing that many cops. There's a lot of cops doing radar. We made it here, no tickets. We're ready to go. Okay, so I guess this is kind of like the open wheel edition, seeing as how TQ Can-Am Midgets, OSCAAR Modifies are sort of bringing them together here. But you were a standout in the TQ ranks. You're headed towards full-body stock car racing now. Take me back a little bit. I know you're a multi-generational driver. How did everything get started for you?
Probably the way we started was my dad decided he wanted to get into the Can-Am Midgets. He realized that they were pretty fast for the price and decided, you know, do I want to go spend $50,000, $60,000 on a late model, or do I want to spend $5,000, $10,000 on a Can-Am Midget? He decided to go that route, and yeah, it just became a love. I love those cars. They're great. I'll probably never stop driving them, even though I get annoyed with the way the clubs run sometimes, or the way the rules go, or motor packages, but you'll get that in any club you ever go to. So just suck it up and go out there and try to do my best.
Now, I know a lot of the guys in the TQ Can-Am Midget ranks. You know, shout outs to Corey Musker and Mac the Man, and a lot of the other guys that sort of run with that club. It's awesome. I love it when they roll through my part of town. But I'm not exactly in the know with the rules and everything that's happening for 2014. I see that there's a couple of guys in an uproar about where the club's headed. What's the big changes that are coming forward for the Lucas Oil TQ Can-Am Midgets that sort of is changing the look of the tour for 2014?
Well, I'd say some of the biggest changes are they decided to go from carburation to fuel injection. I think the fuel injection is the right way to go. Along with the fuel injection, they decided to let you do adjustable cam gears, things like that, where we really wanted to keep the motor stock. So a lot of people are upset that they have to spend a little bit more money. There are good arguments on both sides, but obviously it is going to cause an uproar.
Did I not hear that correctly? They're going aftermarket fuel injection now?
Because I know of. All I know is that I'm pretty sure it's stock. I know what's on my car is a stock fuel injection. And some people are also saying that you'll get more horsepower with the carburation. So some guys will stick with carburation. Me personally, I'm not intelligent enough to make that carburation work perfect all the time. So I'll stick with the fuel injection because I know every time I touch the gas, it's going to make the exact same. It's going to do the exact same thing every time, and I can work on chassis. I consider myself more of a chassis guy than a motor guy. So for me, I'm going to do fuel injection, and I know my car owner Dave Balich, he's going to do the same thing probably, and we just can work on chassis, and we'll be happy with that.
So I'll tell you, the reason my dad and I went OSCAAR Modified was because of the engine rules in the Can-Am Midget. So we had everything planned out, what we were going to buy. In fact, if we were going to buy a used car, what we were going to use, which engine package we would go with, you know, Watts link, 4-link, independent front suspension, straight axle, what size sway bar, everything. And the engine package didn't make any sense. I can build an OSCAAR Modified engine for almost the same money as I can build a Can-Am Midget engine. So.
But have you ever driven a Can-Am?
No, I haven't.
See, that's the problem I have.
Pretty sure we got a deal with that, don't we?
Yeah. I could leave the Can-Am Midgets tomorrow if I hadn't driven one before. Once you drive one, they're so much fun, and they're so fast and so responsive. You know, I driving the NASCAR this year, I felt like I just was hurrying everything up too much. I'd get in the center of the corner, and I'd be trying to get back to the throttle, and I'd come off sideways, and you know, I had to completely relearn how to drive a car. When I drove the Can-Am, it's just, you know, feels like an old shoe, you know?
But I've had a lot of guys tell me about a modified, that once you drive an open wheel modified, you will have no interest in doing anything else.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it?
I've heard the same thing before. You know, you went from a Hurricane Midget, you get in the Legend car, you're like, I'd almost rather go back to the Hurricane Midget. Those things drive so terribly. And then you get in the modified, and somebody asked me what it's like to drive, like, you ever pointed a roller coaster? You know, you strap it in, you go, okay, we're gonna go down that hill. They drive that nice. On new tires, you can do anything. It's like Superman, but on old tires, it's probably more like a Canadian Tire Series car.
How do you, when you're driving a Hurricane, how do you keep your jaw inside? I've never seen those things. Never seen a race car hop so much.
Well,
It looks like you could knock the fillings right out of your
you
teeth.
literally can. But when we ran in 06, 07, the way we built our cars, they had a lot of give to them, and they moved a lot. And you and I talked with high wedge setups, and that's what we did in Hurricane Midget. And it carried the left front, but that for a reason. And it just absorbed the race car.
Personally, I'd probably have to wear a bra if I drove.
Just to keep hitting your face.
All over the place.
Settle them down a little bit.
Yeah, no, they're a lot worse now. The ways the guys are building those cars, they're building them really stiff. They're building them on a square too. For one, they're able to build them really stiff, and then they don't take the race crack at all. Whereas when we have them, you can feel them. You actually feel the seat move in the car.
Now you were a standout in Hurricane Midget ranks. You won a championship in 06? 07. Yeah.
Close.
A lot of guys from the Hurricane ranks sort of find their way into the TQs. It's a real popular route. You mentioned that you were going to go TQ racing after the Legends car. What sort of made you take that sharp turn at Albuquerque and go towards the Ontario Legends Series? You sort of came out of nowhere there.
Albuquerque's a good way to put it. No, I don't know exactly how we did it. It was a cheaper route than Can-Am Midget based on engine and tire rules. Actually, because there's no tire rule either, I guess. But the guys weren't bolting tires on every night in Legend cars. The engines last a lot longer. They were getting 30, 40 nights out of an engine.
I know it was.
What's that?
Bruton Smith.
Yeah.
Put up that $1 million, and you're like, I'm gonna go down the winner.
Yeah.
Did you go run the Legends?
No, there was one. Amanda Yarrow, the president's daughter. She went down and she didn't. She was on her lid and tore up, and she didn't even make it Saturday. But no, the cost is what drove us to Legend Car versus Can-Am Midget. But we weren't in Legend Car long, and we decided it was time for us to go do something else. We got tired of working on somebody else's car that we couldn't change. Whereas with Can-Am Midget or Hurricane Midget or Modified, you build whatever the heck you want.
You've always been real hands-on with everything you guys do. MDB race cars, I love it. I love guys that work on their own equipment. You sort of take it to that next level. Not only are you guys servicing your own equipment and working on it, but you're building your own stuff. I mean, you took this OSCAAR Modified and really made it into like a one-of-one. It's a one-off piece. So it started its life, if I'm not mistaken, as a Howe Super Late model?
No, it's a one-off. It may have been copied from a Howe. It's never been to Howe though.
Okay.
It was built by some guys that ran Checker Flag. It was ran Modified at Checker Flag in '93 was his first year. And yeah, it's homegirl. And then it went to Delaware. It sat for a bunch of years. Then went back to Delaware. And then now we got it.
So now it's a MDB original.
Yeah.
How much work did you guys put into it after you brought it home the first day?
Oh man. Simply put, the only parts left from the original car are the transmission and the fuel cell. Everything else is different, right down to the steering wheel. So there's not a whole lot left. The rear end was bent when we bought it, so we put a quick change in it. It was the natural, because with touring, quick change is the only way to go. It had a 604 in it. We didn't feel like paying $2,000 or $2,500 to have intake gaskets put in it, so we went built motor route, and it's been better for us all around. So we cut up the front clip, put a Camaro stub on it, but it's strut arm underneath. All the mounts have all been modified and hacked off and changed. And
Race car doesn't know how old it is, right?
no.
It's like Joan Rivers, got all these different parts on it.
It's got parts on it. The wide 5 hubs that are on it, I bought from my buddy Nick Rote off of an old Lawler Pro Late that was running Flamborough. He went limited late at Varney, so he had to get rid of his wide 5 stuff. So I paid him a couple $100 for those, and I got parts from everything.
So tell me a little bit about MDB race cars though, because I got my Streamline hat on today because I didn't want to be twins with you, but I rock my MDB race cars hat. I appreciate that I got that one, no charge. So it's all about who you know in this industry. No charge for my MDB race cars hat. But I go around to different speedways and people are like, wait, what is MDB race cars? I'm like, man, it's Matt Barton, it's the New Hamburg Nightmare. But tell me a little bit about what it is and how it sort of came to be.
Well, we started building mini trucks for Grand Bend. We built one basically from scratch, put a pair of clips on it, and then Joel's, we just modified left the stock, the MKS pickup points there, and we just built set of control arms and spindles for it, fixed the geometry on it. It started with that. We thought we'd better put a name on what we do. This is long after Hurricane Midget. Dad and I just decided we'd better put a name on it, and you can joke what MDB stands for. It's Matt and Dale Barton. If I was selfish, it's my middle name, so it'll be Matthew Dale Barton. Or if you want to be sarcastic, it's my damn business. So whatever you want to do with it, but it's just Dad and I working out of our shop. and I say shop, it's a garage attached to the house. We build everything we can because it's cheaper, and odds are, when you buy it, it's probably not what you want anyway. So, like we built a center link this year. We don't run a modified. There's no oil pan to clear because the engine's so far back. We built a center link out of a piece of the square tube. It's the trickiest thing you've ever seen, but it gets the job done. It's stronger than a how piece.
So how many clients does MDB Race Cars have right now?
Not very many.
Not enough. Call MDB Race Cars.
No, not enough. We got my buddy Brent Vincent. He's got my old Hurricane Midget. We converted it from Hurricane Midget to a suspension outlaw for Grand Bend. Then when that class folded up, we've converted it back to Hurricane Midget for him. We put a sled drive on it for him this year. We built a couple guys. I built a car for a guy from Aurora. He's now cut it up and taken it to Westwood. So I don't know where that thing's at anymore. But we don't do a whole lot for other people. My cousin or relative Cole Weaver, he put that limited together a couple years ago. I helped him a bunch with that. He's wanting to put a Thunder car together now. He sold his limited. So we don't do a lot. We don't have a broad reach on who we work for, but we'd like to do some more because tires are expensive.
Now I had Chris Mitchell, handsome Chris Mitchell, shout out to big supporter of bench racing. We were on a road trip. I can't remember where we were, whether it was New Smyrna or North Carolina. I can't remember where we were, but we just got to talking. Before I ever met you, he said, I went and picked up some parts. I can't remember what he bought from you.
Upper link brackets.
He mentioned how taken back he was at how sophisticated your work was and how nice your welding was and just...
That's all Dad.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question is how do two guys that the racing world doesn't really know that well, you're able to put together a product that's this polished and this finely tuned and this well done? Where does that come from?
We take a lot of pride in what we do. That's simply put, and even when we work on somebody else's car, we treat it like it's our own. It always ends up costing the guy more than they want to spend, but that's because we want to take it, we want to ship it to them like we would take our own car to the track. And it's all about your equipment when you go to the track, and if it looks good, odds are it is good, and if it is good, you'll finish the race and probably finish better than you would have if the wheels fell off it. But I don't know exactly. I don't know. We just do what we do. Like, I'm a machinist. Dad's a licensed truck mechanic, and he's been building race cars since the '70s. So he's just good at what he does, and I kind of ride along.
Now you're a hands-on guy too, so you got to respect everything that Matt sort of
not as hands-on as he is.
Well, I mean, you're pretty good. I mean, you've always been real involved with your TQs. You don't take it elsewhere. You're right in there and doing all the work. Is it going to be strange for you to sort of, I mean, once you move into the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, which is what you're hoping to do for 2014, you're not going to have that same involvement with the car and putting it together and fixing it if something happens. You got people to help you do that. It's not going to be like what you're used to with the Lucas Oil TQ Can-Am Midgets. Is that something you're going to need to come to grips with?
To a certain point, when I've never really owned I owned my own car when I ran my rookie year, and that was a bit of a mess, trying to figure out the car and do things with no experience. And then when I moved on and started running for David Balich and Cliff Walsh, between them they've probably got nearly 100 years in the racing industry. So I've learned everything I possibly can learn from Cliff Walsh and David Balich, them two together, and they both have different ways of looking at things. So I learned a little bit from Dave, a little bit from Cliff, and if I didn't have those guys, I wouldn't even know how to work a socket. So with those guys, it's that's the way it is. Now that I'm moving on and going to, I guess you could say, bigger things, I still want to be involved. It's funny, I just got a phone call from my crew chief, just before you showed up, and we were talking about, what he wants to do with the car this year, what we're going to do, and I'm going to head up to his shop for a couple days, and we're going to get in there. And I feel to be a good race car driver, you have to know how a car works. So when I'm, translating what I'm feeling in the seat to what I want in the car, I don't want to just say it's loose or it's tight. Like I want to be able to say, I need a little bit more spring or a little bit more bar or a little bit more of this, and that comes with experience and actually getting in there and working on the car. One of the guys that you look at who's probably as good of a driver as he is somebody who works on the car is a guy like J.R. Fitzpatrick. Everything he drives, he can build. Like, he's not going to drive something and not know how it works, and that's what makes him a good race car driver. You got some guys who can just get in the car and drive the hell out of it, but they're not. If the car's a little bit off one day, they're junk.
Now, is that the sort of disconnect that we've got from some of these younger kids that are coming up? I've mentioned this before on bench racing, that you get some of the younger generation of guys, kids that are 13, 14, 15 years old that aren't in there. They don't know how the car works. If they were to tear it up, they don't know how to put it back together again. Are we losing the mentality that you just spoke about, but to be a good race car, you got to know how the car works? Are we losing that with these next generation of kids that are coming up?
Yes and no. It depends on where they came from. I think at the end of the day, who their parents are, and I look at it from the open wheel midget. I hate to keep beating on the Can-Am midgets. It's what I know. But you look at the people in that club, and you look at a kid like Matt Barton. I'd say 2008, his dad actually made a comment to me. He said, "Can you watch out for Mac? He doesn't know the difference between oil and water." Well, now you look at Mac. He could rebuild his championship winning car from the ground up. Today, do it tomorrow. Blow a motor, he'll know how to change it. He can go to the track by himself and get all the work done. You look at another kid in the series, say Adrian Staley. Every picture he puts up on Facebook is him in the garage working on the car, tearing the car down. Waiting for dad to get home to help me pull the motor out, or this or that. And that's a product of where they came from. Their dad's keeping them involved and saying, "You want to drive a race car, you better work on it." My dad would not let me sit in a race car unless I worked on it, made sure the shop was clean and the trailer was clean. And that's where I came from, a guy like Matt came from, and I'm not going to be the guy to name names, but there are kids out there who their dad has put them in a car and said, "Drive it, I will work on it, you go play with your friends once you hop out of the car, you don't have to do anything."
We got a chair in the trailer for you.
Yeah, go relax, go debrief with your personal coach,
Yeah.
What do you think? Is that lesson number one? Kid wants to go racing, you got to know how to take it apart and put it back together again?
Absolutely. If you appreciate it more, you have more respect for it when you're on the racetrack as well. You're not gonna. I know I have a reputation for wearing no bumpers, but you may not use it up as much. You're not gonna try and fill a hole that doesn't need to be filled when you wait a lap and it'll open up for you. But you look at when I come from Grand Bend, I raced there 5-6 years, and the kids who built their cars, worked on them, took pride in them, were hands-on with their mom and dad or whoever they were there with. Those are the kids that eventually went on to race at Delaware in the trucks, like the Coruscant kids. Matt Coruscant is a good example of that. The Thompson boys, they may not have been so hands-on when they were younger, but they do a little better now. There's got to be more, but
for example, we were talking before you showed up here, Matt and I, about when the Cup guys came up from to Cayuga and ran years ago, and how Matt Kenseth got out of the car and said, "I want this spring, this spring, this spring, this spring," and just knew what to put in the car, and then went out there and picked up, half a second. It makes his car, right?
Yeah.
If you go to a super late model race in the States where Matt's son Ross is racing, it's the exact same deal. Ross Kenseth can take that super late model apart and put it back together again. He knows every inch of that car. So it comes from your dad before you.
Yeah.
Your dad was that kind of guy. Odds are that you're gonna be the exact same way.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about the OSCAAR Modified Tour.
Right.
I love talking about the tour. I love the fact that it's brought organization back to the open wheel modified division, because I'm of the opinion that if OSCAAR hadn't come along to help this class, there probably wouldn't have been an OSCAAR there probably wouldn't have been a modified division in 2016. It was just headed that way, where car counts were thinning and there wasn't the interest, and it was headed downhill in a hurry. So OSCAAR Modifieds, they've been around 2 seasons now. You've had the same champion 2 years in a row. Gary McLean has come in and just mollywopped the whole tour. He wins everywhere. He comes by it honestly, because he works on his equipment. Him and Greg Gibson are geniuses, but does the tour need a driver to sort of come forward and step up and find a way to beat Gary to sort of legitimize itself in the eyes of the public?
We have those drivers, we have those cars, just not on a consistent basis. Though there isn't, Gary and Greg are fast off the truck every week, and that's why they dominate. Whereas there are a handful of other cars that, and I'm going to include us in on that, and I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but we've had some good runs. We just, you have a mechanical problem, or you miss a race and you don't qualify as good in heat race, and Gary has this thing with the redraw. Man, he's got magic fingers. I don't know how he does it, but he pulls a 1 every week, and we do have like Max Bjork. That car is the craftsmanship on that car. Jeff did an awesome job on that car.
Right?
It is beautiful. It's shaped a little funny, but the craftsmanship is absolutely beautiful.
It's a handling car. It's a wedge. It looks like a wedge.
Yeah, but that car is quick, even with the automatic in it, it's quick. Davey had some good runs. Brent McLean, obviously, he won, I think, 2 races, maybe 3 this year.
Yep.
So Steve Smith won it at Sauble a year ago.
Yep.
So there are other guys that are capable of winning. But you just, you got to be just as consistent, if not more consistent, than the 8 car, because the 8 car is that damn good.
And do you feel as though with each passing week now that we're 24 months into this tour, that the rest of the field's getting a little bit closer to Gary? That as fast as Gary is, everyone's just sort of closing that gap a little bit more?
Not taking anything from Gary, but the gap was closed up a lot this year. I mean, I know we, with our car, had a few times where I led some laps at Sunset opening night, and yeah, I beat him on a restart, but I still led those laps, and he didn't have nothing for me until the next restart where he beat me. But, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
You know what, if you ask me just from an outsider opinion, I think if they open up the things like they say they're going to for next year, and you got a guy like Andy Jankowiak coming in, he's just
pronounced that very well.
I've raced against him before in the midgets, right? He's so good he's such a good driver. I think he's somebody you got to worry about for a few races next year. As good as McLean is, you put Andy in, he gets more than 1 practice session and 1 heat race in a weekend. If he's there for the whole weekend, he gets all his practices in.
And has time.
Has some time to tune in. He doesn't borrow tires off of Mike. If he comes out and runs the program like everybody else does, I think you're scared, because I know I saw him race in Atlantic City, and probably one of the junkiest, ugliest midgets I've ever seen in my life, and it was phenomenal to see what he could do in the car. So, from a driver, he's up here in my mind as for respect,
Oh, Andy's a beast, and he comes by, honestly, I mean, Tony Jankowiak was one of the best of that era of the tour guys. Back when the tour was, it was like an outlaw schedule where you got guys from New York and Pennsylvania, and the southern guys would come up and go to battle. I mean, Tony was a stud, and Andy sort of picked up right where Tony left off. And I've seen Andy run one of the junkiest looking SST modifieds I've ever seen in my life, and he brought it out at Lancaster. The taco car, at the U.S. Open, and he dominated, man. It was one of the best performances I've ever seen. So if he can bring that type of consistency to the OSCAAR Tour, absolutely he might be one to keep an eye on to sort of dethrone that 8 car. Now, I don't think he's going to run a full tour.
No, he'll run a full
I think he's going to run a half a tour, which is still a lot of races when you're commuting from New York.
And he just got another car, too.
He did, yeah. He just bought a car that I think he used to own. He bought it back or something.
I think he ran for from what I heard, I think he ran for an owner and then ended up.
So that's going to be his OSCAAR car. He's not going to have to convert back and forth, so that'll allow him to come up and run with the tour. Now, it's a good segue to my next question, because I check out the OSCAAR posts sometimes on Facebook, and it seems as though with each passing week, the club, or the tour, is getting more divided with guys that want to change the rules and guys that want to sort of stay the course and keep things the way they are. I don't know if it's directly because we've had this car from the States come up and guys are like, oh, what can we do to sort of import more Western New York drivers, but guys want to drop the ride height, they want to change the weight as well. There's talks of that.
If there's changes in the weight, that's because they don't like the way the engine packages and the weights are paired.
2-barrel, right, for them as well?
For
the guys from the States.
I hope so. 11.5 to 1, I hope so. Because there's no way you can compete with that. That's a super late model over there. So I think that they're talking about dropping the ride height, which I think we're going to get that. That's the club, the higher ups in the club, without the driver's influence, I think it's going to happen. The brake calipers, I've heard, it's going to come with a weight penalty. It's going to be grandfathered in. I'm still going to stick with my steel calipers. I'm already at maximum weight with the build motor. The ride height, they're going to change it. I don't know. You drove an MCAS car, when they're on the ground, they're on the ground. What's the difference if it starts at 2 inches or 4 inches?
Whatever your car works at is whatever your car is going to work at. It depends on the chassis. Right?
Everybody's dragging the crossmember anyway, so who cares?
Yeah.
Now, if they were to drop the ride height, and you seem pretty confident that's going to happen, I guess before 2014.
Next weekend.
Would that sort of keep guys from having to reclip their cars now? Well, much like what Shane Stickle had to do and Davey Terry, and I'm sure there's others that I'm forgetting that had to completely reclip their car to bring it up to OSCAAR specs?
It's all on how you want to run the car. If you want to go down, the draw to the New York or the Troy or the Too Quick or whatever you want to buy, the draw to them is how cheap they are used. you can buy them 10, 12 years old for a lot less than you buy one up here.
Yes.
So that's the draw to it. Everybody wants to go buy a cheap car, not change anything, and go race. Up here, we run on old late model rules at 4 inches with steel calipers and whatnot. So it's who do you please? The guys who want to get in or the guys who are already there? And we've all adapted, or we were all complying to the rules that are there already. Do we change? Do we spend money so that we can bring in new cars? I don't know. We did 24 cars at Sunset and 22 or something like that out on colors. Do we need to change the rules?
I mean, I was going to ask a tour that's only been around for 2 seasons, that is just now finally, I shouldn't say finally, but they've done a good job to get to a full field now. You closed out 2013 with a pair of full fields, and good fields, good cars, good quality competition. Why now? Why start changing the rules now? Where is it coming from what you've been able to gauge?
I honestly, I don't understand it myself, because we're happy with what we have. We fit the rules package. If they want to tweak the weights a little bit, so be it. But I don't, unless there's 50 guys knocking on the door saying we want to come run, I don't see the reason to change the rules. But I don't know what's causing it, because guys like Davey or Shane have already cut up their cars to run at 4 inches, and I guarantee you they're not going to spend the money to cut up and go back. So I don't know what the
depends on
is.
what you like as a setup. Do you want a conventional, or do you want to go down? You want to go down to that 2-inch
Yeah.
right height?
Well, see,
and
and
go bump stops. And
We
stuff.
can't run bump stops.
Oh,
That is the one
well,
constant in the rule, and you can't do any of that. They don't check it like ACT does, where they roll it up on blocks and push, stand on the bumper.
I love
I
that.
wish they would do that, but they don't. But we don't have a rule that says you have to travel past the ground. But we can't coil bind, we can't run bump stops. There's a line in the rule book that clearly states that. So, and I told Dave Gameforth, I said, you do whatever you want with ride heads, as long as there's no bump stops.
Now, when President Dave Gameforth put the package together to bring OSCAAR sanctioning to the open wheel modifieds, I sat down with him and we spoke, and one of his selling points was that he's able to put this tour together utilizing the cars that are already in Ontario. There's a grip of old Lawmac cars. You go out Mount Forest Way, Varney, and I guess Saul used to have an open wheel modified division. There's a ton of them. And some guys have been able to bring some of those cars out and update them just a touch, and they work at the 4-inch ride height. Now, if you were to change it to a 2-inch, does that make those cars obsolete, or are they going to be able to make them work?
No, well, mine's 4 inches. They're all 4 inches, so they could change the rule to 2 inches. Like I said, when you're on the ground, you're on the ground. I don't know how it's gonna be a big gain. I really don't see how you're gonna pick up it, because a heavier spring beats at the tires. A soft spring is easier on the tires, they last longer. And Jeff Hanley told us all this at the meeting last year. This wasn't the first time I heard this, but Jeff told us all this at the meeting last fall. He says, you guys run heavy springs if you want, they're just gonna beat up the tires faster. And I agree with that. And up 1 tire a night, and the cost of the tire and all that, you don't need to beat up your tires. They're precious as it is.
Yeah.
You're a pretty unbiased observer. You don't have a dog in this fight yet. I know that you're a fan of all things racing, but I've noticed that anytime, if you're at Sunset and the OSCAAR modifieds are there, if you're in the tower with me watching everything you can, you've seen your fair share of this style of racing. With these rules that they're thinking about, and I know that we're far off from it having happened yet. By the time I post this, I'm late as hell. This might go up like weeks after the drivers' meeting, so it might already be changed. I apologize, but right now the rules haven't changed. Are they headed down a slippery slope here, or could this be a good thing for the tour?
I think it's like Matt said, if they've already changed the cars, like if, Davey and Shane have already changed their cars to work the way they're not going to cut them up and make them do something else. And you've got the old McCall cars that used to run out of Delaware. I don't know if they're all McCall cars, but some of them are called McCall cars.
Yeah.
You got cars like that where DeMello went out and won a race this year. I heard he spanked the field at Court.
I think he had fresh tires though. I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
He didn't win, but he was he ran well.
Oh, okay, so
yeah, Kernan spanked the field at Court.
No, on 4 new tires.
On 4 new tires.
So those cars still run well the way they are. So if a car runs well, you get a lot of guys who say, I'm not going to waste my time and change it. But then, you'll get a couple guys from the States who don't have to change as much, and they'll come up and run. Or you go by, I was down at Atlantic City last year, and I got talking to a few of the modified guys who run in the wheel and modified series, and they said, I got 6 chassis sitting out behind my shop right now that I could give away pretty much. Well, if you can get a car like that or give away a car like that pretty much, you'll get a few more guys in the club, and it might help it out. So it is a slippery slope sometimes when you make changes to a club, but you never know. It could turn out that you get 3 or 4, 5, 6 cars from the States that come up every week.
I made the comment, we chose OSCAAR over Can-Am Midget because of the engine package. they went, the year we went OSCAAR modified is when they brought the Suzuki in.
Yeah.
The newer style motor, all the great things that there is to do with the Suzuki. And then I kind of went, oh, well, you know, we could have chose, and Barry Dunn coming, because you should have said, you should have gone with Can-Am Midget, it's cheaper, smaller truck, smaller trailer, burns less fuel. Okay, he's right. But I went straight back to him, I said, Barry, you guys changed engine rules a year too late.
Well, and
If you'd have done that a year earlier, I'd be running Can-Am Midget right now.
yeah, and what, to be competitive when you were running, you needed a motor that had $4,000 or $5,000 into it, you know, and those things were taking time bombs. You know, I know the year, I think it was 2011, the last time I ran a Kawasaki, we blew or dropped valves, or, you know, we wrecked motors 3 or 4 times in the year. We won, I think it was 6 races that year, 6 features, and didn't finish inside the top 5 in points, because every other week we wrecked a motor or had a wreck or something, right? And now that you run the Suzuki, I don't know, you know, I wasn't at every race this year, but I didn't hear about guys grenading motors left, right, and center.
I talked to Moser about it, or Moser, I talked to him about it, and he says, you know, I buy a motor for $1,500 or whatever from the junkyard, just you know, put a set of rings in it, set of bearings, and he says, I paid $1,000 or $1,500, whatever he paid for his setup, his carburetor setup, and his wiring harness to convert the injected motor over to carburetors.
Yeah.
But I can transfer those to different motors, versus $4,000 and $5,000 for a super stock. He said he was spending way less, and they last longer, and they make more power. So this all kind of sounds like it makes sense.
Well, and it's a fuel thing too. At the end of the day, with those cars, I think I could use half a jerry can full of, you know, Shell 93 or 92, whatever it is, high octane fuel, and run the whole weekend on half a jerry can.
I wish.
And not have to worry about buying, you know, expensive fuel and going through a lot of it. So there is that cost there, but you know, a lot of people don't like running in a club as well, because there's, you know, little clicks here and there, and you don't feel like you're getting everything that you should be getting.
So we found that we were in Legend Car. We'd show up in Michigan. Nobody knows who we are, where we came from. Looked like we just bought a car and decided to go racing, and we run inside the top 10, and they would piss them off. And then we go up here and run in Ontario. And the difference between Michigan and Ontario, you run in Michigan, you go home tired, beat up, wore out, but everything on the car is straight. You run here in Ontario, every week we go home in a basket. I tell you, the guys who run at the front, the guys who cause all the crap. So
I've seen Legends races at Kawartha where they absolutely destroy those cars. Like, it's crazy the amount of damage that some of these guys can put on a Legends car on a fast track like that.
There's not a whole lot to them. Like the cage around the driver is strong, but outside that, they're meant to move.
They're meant to make you buy more panels. They're meant to make you...
Clips.
Exactly.
Rear ends, axles.
Designed a certain way, right?
Oh,
you know what?
it's a line Bruton Smith's pockets, yeah.
The first race car I ever sat in with, or got to drive actually, was I did the Mark Dilley experience out at Barrie with a friend of mine, James Gray, and he invited me out there for the weekend, or for the day, and we got to drive those Legend cars, and I thought the whole time I was out there, I felt like I was on ice. I said, I'm going to spin out, that's what I kept feeling. And yeah, I think those cars are great to teach young drivers car control and stuff, and the feel in the seat, but they're a little nerve-wracking sometimes to be running side by side.
I bet that was when the Uncle Mark driving experience didn't even come with a free Wild Wing lunch.
It didn't.
Much better
He
now.
bailed halfway through the day to go testing with Whitlock out of Delaware, so
Probably went to Wild Wing first.
Brad Moran actually finished teaching us how to drive that day.
All right, so I love when we get further into the interviews and we get to talk to guys about, you know, different drivers that myself or people watching this interview might not know about. So you're in the know when it comes to the Lucas Oil TQ Can-Am Midget Club Tour. We don't see many of these guys move on to stock car racing and other tours. Is there anyone in the club right now that we could see driving, you know, maybe piloting a late model or in an OSCAAR modified the next couple of years?
It's tough to say, because a lot of the young guys that come into that series, their fathers raced in that series, and they'll probably be Can-Am guys for a long time. You know, one guy who sticks out in my mind, obviously, is the champ from this year, Matt Barton. I could see him moving on to a super modified, because I know how much he loves those cars and wants to do some. I could see him moving up and doing something like that. You know, he's financially, he might be able to handle it, where a lot of people won't be able to handle that. And just for the ability to handle one of those cars, I think he'd be able to do it. But a lot of guys in that series come from family and who have run in that series and might stick with it. They might move on. I don't know. You know, the next, I think, good young driver in that series is probably a kid like Tyler Turnbull, and he comes from a long line of, you know, racing family.
They used to build their mini sprint motors.
Yeah, and
Back in the day.
Tyler looks like he's, if you just were to see him, he'd look like a 12-year-old kid walking through the pits. But he could drive one of those cars, and he impressed the heck out of me the few races I went to watch. So I could see him being the next, you know, fast guy, him doing like the Mac DeMan, where, you know, he started off young and every year got faster and faster until he was untouchable. I could see Tyler being like that with his, you know, his grandfather and his father helping him. So.
Are you still in the known Hurricane Midgets? I hope you are, 'cause I'm going to ask you about it anyway.
Oh man.
Here we go. Because a lot of those kids are drivers. They move on to, I guess some of them move on to the K&Fs, and some of them just stop racing. I mean, you moved up to Legends and OSCAAR Mods, but I can't think of any other driver that's sort of taken that same career route. I mean, is there anybody right now? I would kill to see Robin McLean in something a little bit heavier. I don't see a lot of the Hurricane Midgets, but I think Robin has a lot of talent. I would love to see him in something a little bit bigger, maybe something with fenders on it, or even in an OSCAAR modified. Is there anyone else that's with the Hurricane Midgets right now that you could see moving on to something a little bit bigger?
You know, much as we do a little work for the club, I don't get to make it to a lot of races, but I'm gonna selfless plug here. My buddy Brent, he's running some Hurricane Midget. He comes from the dirt down in London.
That'd be Brent Kemps.
Kemps,
See,
yeah.
First rule of bench racing, first and last names. You gotta go with it. Like,
Sorry.
dude, there are a lot of Brents in racing.
You're right.
There's a lot of them.
But, Brent there, him and I did a little Hurricane Midget this summer. We had a good run at Saul. We come from like 22nd to 3rd in 20 laps, and the guy can drive. He's a wheelman, and he's my spotter in the modified. And I'd like to see him do something else. Canyon Midget is one, like, I'd really love to see him do it, whether he ever does it or does anything past 440 racing. But, you know, there's guys like Rob McCall. I don't know if he won any races this year, but he's up there in the points. He's good. He's getting up there in the age, I guess. I'm not going to call him old, but no, there's some guys there. I don't know any names off the top of my head that jump out and say that kid's going to go somewhere. Yeah. But there are some talented drivers in that series for sure.
Well, if you look at those two series, the Hurricane Midgets and the Can-Am Midgets, kind of the reason people go to those series are because of the cost.
Yeah.
So usually, you know, you'll get one or two that come out of that series and move on to something else. But the reason they're racing in those series is because the cost is low, they get to do their hobby, and they have a great time doing it. They don't have to go buy, you know, a big gooseneck trailer and a dually. So that's kind of why a lot of if you were to ask us, you know, who's moving up in a mini stock, who's moving up in a Thunder car, you know, usually those guys are in that situation to do a stepping stone.
Yeah.
That series is more of a, I love the speed, I love to go fast, this is my opportunity to do it, you know? A Can-Am Midget could do a 13-second lap around Sunset. Well, you'd have to pay how much money to get a super modified, or a super late model to do that, right?
Cubic money.
Yeah.
So what would be the budget for a Hurricane Midget to run the full season compared to, I guess, like a mini stock? Is
Probably
it
very similar.
Very comparable?
Yeah, I know that when we ran Hurricane Midget, it was all traveling. You know, I think we had a total of 10 tires for the year, and we ran 16 races. And a lot of times we ran the same 4 tires every night. So we had 2 regulars we cycled it just for staggering. But tires aren't an expense, fuel's not all that much money. You can keep a motor together. You can go 2 years on a motor.
So it's mostly just because New Hamburg is located at the edge of the earth.
Yes.
That's
right before you walk off, yeah.
Gotcha. I figured that. I swear to God, dude, next time we have you on bench racing, we'll come to your shop.
All right,
because you drove 17 hours to be here today. We'll go to your shop next. I'll come up with someone else.
We'll share the flight.
I'll make someone drive. You don't even want to see the budget for bench racing.
Get a sleeping co-pilot.
It doesn't exist. There's no money in this. So someone's gonna have to drive me because I don't have the money for the gas to get all the way to New Hamburg.
You need to work on sponsors, man.
Clearly I do. Yeah, I think you could probably teach me a thing or two about securing sponsorship.
The class starts right after this.
Exactly. He's gonna top this picture up and take me to school.
And then somebody else is driving me home.
Exactly.
You're right here.
Yeah, I've never actually emptied the contents of a Rockstar can out before, and I'm probably never going to do it again. That's an aggressive color. Let's talk a little bit about scheduling before we're done with this. Sunset Speedway has dialed back their schedule. Flamborough did it a couple of years back with their late models. I think Delaware might be pruning some dates off as well. The OSCAAR Modified Tour is going the other way. You guys have been adding dates. You started as a 12 race schedule, and now it's a 16 race
It was
schedule.
16 last year, and they said at the banquet last weekend it's going to be 14 next year.
Is that the sweet spot, 14 races for
I'd
you
like to
guys?
see Swallow again, but I know Mark at Sunset wants his 5, which is great. We all love going there, and there's a lot of guys that are close to Sunset, so that works. But I think they eliminated a lot of the 2-day shows, like the 2-day deal at Delaware, which to me that was not a good idea. You know, we qualified on Friday night in front of 5,000 people with the super modifieds, and then went back the next day and ran in front of 150 people with the endurance cars. Did not make sense whatsoever. But they eliminated a lot of the 2-day shows. They said that they're giving us a week off in between every race, with the exception of one weekend. I think we get 2 back-to-back weekends, but they're spreading it out, and they go back to 14 races. But
How many times are you going to race this year? Because you want to do almost a full NCAS schedule, right? I've mentioned this like 3 or 4 times. I hope it's not something you've been trying to keep secret.
I'm planning on doing that. Obviously, there's nothing set in stone, but that's the way it is in racing. But I'd like to run the whole season, including the out west. But it's costly to do that, so we might have to drop out the out west stuff.
So that's what, 12 days?
12, yeah.
I think.
Well, it depends. I haven't seen the schedule yet. If it's come out.
I don't even know how many races NCAS has.
They usually, last year I think it was 12 races. So that, and then as many Can-Ams, midgets races as I can get to. I'd like to run some OSCAAR Modified this year, so as many OSCAAR Modified races as I can get to.
you guys can come with stickers and beer. We're good.
You guys can trade heads up for
We talked about that at the Velocity.
Yeah, we talked about that actually at the Velocity. I said, let's do a straight up trade. I'll go run autumn colors and we'll do something with the midgets. And I could twist his arm, I think. It was his dad I couldn't get past.
It was the D and NDB race.
Yeah, it was the D that stopped it.
No, we got a top 10 points we wanted, so
Yeah.
not that you couldn't do it for us, but I wouldn't get any points for it. So
Yeah, exactly.
So is OSCAAR Modified right now number 1 on your bucket list? I know NCAS was number 1, but now you've sort of moved towards making that happen. Is OSCAAR Modified the next thing you want to check off?
It's something I'd like to do. I'd like to try. There's a lot of really good drivers in the series. I'd like to race against those drivers and see how I stack up. And it looks like a ball. I love open wheel racing, so it'd be neat to go out there and do that. I want to drive anything though. I would get in a mini stock tomorrow if somebody said, "Come drive my mini stock." I just want to drive. So I'll drive anything, and it's a wheelbarrow with a motor on it. We're going. Doesn't have a motor though. I'm not doing it.
I've had a lot, when I look back at some of the guys I've interviewed for bench racing, I think they all pretty much say that exact same thing.
Yeah.
I think Dan McCaddy said he'd drive a garbage can with a motor in it. I don't know how you would make that happen. I don't have an engineering background, but it doesn't seem like something that's too feasible, but he would do it.
If you're a driver, you're a driver. You just want to drive.
What's the one thing you're looking forward to in 2014?
oh man, can't wait to put a clip on this car and see if we make it faster.
Now, with 14 races, is that in the budget, or do we need to get you some more sponsorship?
Oh, we definitely need more sponsors. We need sponsorship.
Period.
No, like I said, I've told you before, my shoes are at the front door at home. I haven't been told I have to leave, but my bags are ready for me. There's not a date, but the number's counting down. And so, using my income to go racing is not really feasible next year. So we'd like to do, I don't know, I'd like to pick 5 or 6.
Crown jewels only, so it'd be what, Velocity, Autumn Colors, Biederman,
Yeah,
Kawartha.
I'd like to go back to Barrie. I know you guys aren't a big fan of that place, but for some reason the car works good there. So Barrie, yeah, I'd like to be at the opener. Everybody must be at the opener on May long weekend. But yeah, we'll see. If we had, these fine folks from the Muskoka Brewery who want to come along, but
2-car team.
that'd be all right. But if we stumble upon something, then maybe we'll do a little more. But at this point, it's probably going to be 5 or 6.
So what's the? I mean, you got a lot coming down the turnpike for you in 2014. What's the one thing you're looking forward to more than anything else?
Well, the one thing I would be looking forward to is just being able to sew up the deal to run the whole series, because that's a lot of stress on you just waiting to see, there's hundreds of different talks that have to go on. It's a lot more work than I expected it to be. And, I've said this many times before, I don't come from a wealthy family, so anything I do in racing literally has to come from my amazing sponsors. And if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to do it. So there's just a lot of meetings talking to them and a lot of, doing what you got to do to make it happen. And I have one deal with my wife that racing isn't going to cost us a cent out of our own pocket. And as long as I can keep that deal going, we're good. So far we're doing that. So just getting the deal sewn up would be tops on my list, but after that, rookie of the year all the way. I want to go for rookie of the year.
And Daniel's wife is awesome because she actually came through and held the camera for us
She's
today.
amazing.
Yeah, Chris Doucette was not able to be with us for I think for the second shoot in a row, Chris was not able to be here. Kat stepped up, done a
You
good
need a
job.
tripod.
I gotta go and see the footage, so I'm sure it's probably good. It can't be any worse than my Autumn Colors interview with Jason Parker and
How many
Tom.
cameras did you do?
4 cameras. It
Wow.
took 3 hours.
We did it with one.
3 hours to get 45 minutes of footage Autumn Colors. This was a much better shoot. Anything else you want to add? Man, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Who's going to be the one driver to beat Gary McLean next year? If the 8 car doesn't win the championship, who's it going to be? Who's going to be the champion?
Ah, man.
You're on the spot right now.
Yeah, I got somebody pointing at me, but I don't know. Dollars, money talks. But, oh, man. He's my buddy. I'm going to go with Davey. They got that little rocket figured out, and he started coming on there at the end of the year.
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Davey Terry.
Aaron Express, yeah.
Realest dude on the OSCAAR Modified
They
Tour.
all have cool nicknames except for me.
We'll work on it.
The real deal, Daniel
We'll
Bois.
work
Make
on
it
it.
a brace bridge.
So,
What can you make of the brace bridge?
I have no
we'll go to lunch and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you guys for the support. I think this is volume 14, I think.
That's what you said.
That's what, 14, yep. Follow Matt Barton on Twitter at Matt_Barton2.
Got it.
Follow Daniel Bois on Twitter at DB Autosport. Follow myself on Twitter at Spencer Lewis. And we'll be back for volume 15. I have no idea who it's going to be. Maybe we'll be in New Hamburg with Matt Barton next. But thank you so much. Follow us on Twitter. Again, check out the YouTube page and we'll see you for volume 15.